Hey folks, I recently found a video on Twitter of a pastor from Mississippi. This guy offered a message, and I'm just going to very gently brush over it. Basically what he says is that George Soros, by offering scholarships to black university students, he destroyed what was a beautiful, closed nation. He was talking about South Africa. And what he said was South Africa had this great culture as a colony, that they had this wonderful foundation of law under the Queen, that everything there was wonderful and perfect during apartheid. And that it wasn't until George Soros began offering black university students scholarships that everything fell apart. At best, this is a completely misunderstood, uneducated opinion about what South Africa was like. At worst, this is someone who is genuinely trying to rewrite history, to make South Africa during apartheid some sort of human utopia in a beautiful part of Africa. Either way, we cannot actually heal the problems in our societies, whether that's inequality, whether that's injustice, whether that is our fight against poverty, against homelessness, whether it's making amends, making things right with our indigenous populations, regardless of what it happens to be. There is no social problem that we can actively work to heal unless we are willing to actually look at it. Now this is going to sound really out of left field, but just give me a second. I'm really squeamish around bodily fluids. I don't like blood. I'm terrified that if I look into a cut, I'm going to see the bone, or I'm going to see the muscle tissue, I'm going to see something that I shouldn't see. And it's not just in humans. I don't like squishing a bug for the exact same reason. Last fall, I was doing some work at our cabin, and I was using a circular saw, and I know what I'm doing with a circular saw: ear protection, eye protection. Keep your fingers away from it until it completely stops moving. Don't fiddle with it unless it's unplugged. I understand all that stuff, but like so many other people, when you understand it and when you've always been safe, sometimes you cut a corner anyway. This one day there was a piece of wood sticking in the guard. I reached down. Blade, of course, hadn't stopped moving. I whipped the piece of wood out, my thumb got caught, and I chopped my thumb up. I felt one of the teeth, or multiple teeth, hit the bone, hit the tip of the bone in my thumb. I felt it rip through my fingernail. I felt it open up the flesh. I immediately grabbed it with one hand and covered it. And I stayed that way for as long as I possibly could. And I realized, because of a buddy of mine, he told me this, feminine hygiene products are fantastic things to take with you when you're using heavy equipment in the woods or dangerous equipment in the woods. And so I grabbed one of the pads that we had, I unwrapped it, and I put it over my thumb, and sure enough, they are fantastic. Life hack right there. But I kept it there. And I kept it there for like 45 minutes. I was terrified to look at it. I was terrified to look at it. And so I didn't. And I wrapped it all up until I got home. And when I got home, I finally unwrapped it, because I had to see if I needed to go to the hospital or not. So I unwrapped it. I took the bandage away. And I looked at it. And I wanted to throw up, but I didn't. But the fingernail was half missing. Skin was hanging off. Blood was congealed. And I was able to decide that I didn't need stitches, but I could just let it heal. But I couldn't have made that decision until I looked at the wound. So this guy going on about South Africa, that it was some form of utopia. He may be right that those scholarships to those black students given by George Soros was the beginning of the end of apartheid. That's fine. He might actually be right on that. But that isn't to say that those students began causing trouble. It isn't to say that people like Nelson Mandela was the reason that trouble arose. The damage was there. The pain, the suffering, the injury was there. The disease was there. It was just hidden. And when those facades finally began to come down, it wasn't easy. It was an incredibly difficult time for the people there. For all people there. There was a time of huge upheaval, and they are still seeing violence. They're seeing violence between the colonists, violence and the Africans, violence amongst the Africans, violence directed towards foreigners, foreign workers that are there. They are seeing these sorts of upheavals. They are seeing this kind of trauma. But these things weren't just caused with the fall of apartheid. They were always there. They just weren't visible. These things, this upheaval, is part of the healing process. As we move forward in this world, as we try to bring change into this world, we have to know where the injuries are. We have to know where the disease is. We have to know where the pain, where the suffering is, or we don't have any way of knowing what we're supposed to be working on. We have no idea of which direction we're supposed to go. And when we remove the facades and we're able to see what's truly there, and we start doing that work, some of that work is going to cause pain. Some of that work is going to cause trouble. It's going to cause other forms of suffering. But we need to do that work. We need to be willing to engage in that process. It's painful to actually look at the pains, the suffering in our society. It's painful to see our place in it. But if we don't, we can never do the work that's required to truly make this the world that God intended it to be. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that you and I would always be so bold and so courageous to be willing to pull aside the facades, to remove the bandages, to actually look at the pain and the suffering, to look at the injuries, to look at the disease, so that we can find our true way forward in making this a better world. Amen.